Ivan, on your spot. Nice. The plan that summer was that I would put Bob's footage up on the mini monitor, describe the behavior of the wolves, and talk about the proposed wolf reintroduction in Yellowstone. Most of my time was devoted to what the park was called roving interpretations. That involves going where the biggest crowds are and informally talking to as many people as possible. Only a small percentage of park visitors go to scheduled ranger programs. So there is a need to reach the many people who do not attend any of our talks. It's like being a street preacher rather than a minister giving a sermon in the church. I borrowed a wolf pelt for the summer and tried to figure out how to attract the attention of visitors so I could tell them the reintroduction story. I remember the first time I stopped in the parking lot at Towers Falls. I put on my park ranger hat, checked my uniform, took out the wolf pelt, started to walk toward a crowd of people. I was immediately surrounded by scores of visitors who all asked about the pelt. I developed a talk where in a few minutes I explained that wolves were native to Yellowstone but had been killed off by the early rangers. The Park Service later realized what a mistake we had made and now hoped to reintroduce wolves to the park by bringing animals in from Canada. I talked to one cluster of people, then moved on to the next group. I could get my message out to about 300 people an hour that way. Most of them would never have gone to any of the park's formal programs. To add variety to my work, I went into gift shops with a pelt and strolled through the aisles. As they had done in the parking lots, people rushed over to see what I was carrying. I then went through my short talk before switching over to the next aisle. In midsummer, we got word that the park's wolf reintroduction proposal had been approved by Bruce Babbitt, President Clinton's Secretary of the Interior. From that point on, I revised my talks to say that we would be bringing the wolves back during the coming winter. By the end of the season, I estimated that I had talked to over 25,000 park visitors about wolves and the plan to reintroduce them into Yellowstone. That summer, I finished work on my second wolf book, War Against the Wolf, America's Campaign to Exterminate the Wolf. It was a collection of historical documents going back to the colonial days that trace the origins of anti-wolf bias in America and the reason our country was determined to kill off all the wolves, even in national parks. The book also reprinted some of the early writings that began to portray wolves in a more positive light, such as Ernest Thompson's Sitton's Lobo the King of Currumbah. It finished with the current plans to bring wolves back to the northern Rockies and the Southwest. I commissioned wolf biologists and wolf advocates to write new articles for the book and wrote several new essays myself on wolf recovery and the plans for Yellowstone. The book came out in the spring of 1995. My job as wolf interpreter ended in September, the traditional time when park visitation dropped off. I had been invited to go on a speaking tour of Ireland and England that fall, and I left the park to talk about wolves and the Yellowstone reintroduction in Belfast, London, and several other cities. One of my lectures was to the Royal Zoological Society. I was interviewed several times by BBC radio stations. The wolf reintroduction program was capturing international attention. That fall, I thought a lot about the summer I had spent in Yellowstone. A comment made by Henry David Thoreau, who grew up just a few miles from where I did in Massachusetts, came to mind. He was born in 1817, much too late to see wolves as he walked through the woods of New England. In an 1856 journal entry, he expressed his sadness over the extermination of wolves and other native animals in his area. He felt he lived in a tamed and emasculated country. Thoreau spoke of the sounds and notes of the natural world no longer in his woods and mourned that he had lived in an incomplete land. He went on to say, "I listened to a concert in which so many parts are missing. The most prominent of those missing sounds was the howling of wolves. Yellowstone in 1994 was in the same state as Thoreau's native land of Massachusetts. There was an unnatural silence in the park, a silence uninterrupted by the sounds of wolves. But that silence was not broken. Wolves were coming back. After my trip overseas, I returned to Big Bend for my second winter season. That fall, Yellowstone hired 2 wolf biologists to plan the reintroduction and to monitor the wolves after their release. Mike Phillips and Doug Smith. Mike, the only biologist in the country with wolf reintroduction experience, was designated the project leader. He had worked for the U.S. Wildlife Service as the Red Wolf Recovery Program Coordinator and had overseen the reintroduction of that species in North Carolina. Doug had spent many years researching wolves in Isle Royale National Park in Lake Superior under the supervision of Rolf Peterson of Michigan Tech. He later did wolf out studies in North Carolina for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under Dave Meck, who was also a professor at the University of Minnesota. David helped Durwood Allen of Purdue University start the Isle Royale wolf study back in 1958. It became the longest running wolf research project ever undertaken. Rolf took over supervision of the study in 1974. Doug's experience with Dave and Rolf meant that he was trained by the 2 top wolf biologists in the world. Mike had worked on Isle Royale with Doug, so they knew each other. In January of 1995, I went on another speaking tour, this time in Ohio. That happened to be the same time the wolves arrived in Yellowstone. 14 wolves, members of 3 packs, and 1 lone male had been captured in Alberta, about 550 miles north of Yellowstone. They arrived in the park in a horse trailer on January 12th, and I watched the CNN television coverage of the event. When I got back to Big Bend, I got more detailed information from friends in Yellowstone. The 3 packs had been put in separate acclimation pens in the northern section of the park, near where I had been based at Tower Junction. That was an area with a high density of elk, a primary prey species of the original Yellowstone wolves, as well as for the packs newly arrived from Alberta. Each pen was about 1 acre in size. The first 2 wolves captured were a mother and her female pup from the McLeod pack. Another female pup from that family had just been shot, and all the other members of that pack, including the alpha male, likely were dead, killed by hunters. The mother, designated as Wolf 9, and pup, Wolf 7, were the only known survivors. They were placed in a pen built in Lamar Valley behind the Yellowstone Institute. Because the pack did not have a breeding male, the wolf captured as a lone male was also put in that pen. He was given the number 10. The group was named the Rose Creek Pack. The pack described in the prologue ended up in a pen 6 miles east of Tower Junction and became known as the Crystal Creek Pack. The alpha pair, female 5 and male 4, and the 4 male pups were the wolves television crews filmed when rangers and other park staff unloaded their metal cages from the truck and took them up to the pen on a sled pulled by mules. The pups, designated as Wolf 8, was a little gray the little gray in the prologue. At 72 pounds, he was the smallest of the 4 brothers, and of the 14 wolves brought in from Canada. The last one in his pack to be captured, he almost got left behind. The 5 members of the Soda Butte Pack, known in Canada as the Berland Pack, ended up in a pen in Lamar Valley, east of the Yellowstone Institute. As death threats had been made against the wolves, armed law enforcement rangers guarded the packs 24 hours a day while they were in the pens. Those rangers who trudged through deep snow and sub-zero temperatures throughout the long Wyoming winter nights were the unsung heroes of the story. Thanks to their dedicated work, no wolves were harmed while in their pens. During the 10 weeks the wolves were in confinement, Park Service employees brought in elk, deer, and bison carcasses twice weekly to feed the packs. These were mostly animals killed in collisions. These were mostly animals killed in collisions on local highways. Wild wolves need an average of 10 pounds of meat per day in the winter to meet their energy demands. For the 6 wolves in the Crystal Creek pen, that amounted to over 350 pounds per week. On March 21st at 4:15 p.m., Mike Phillips and Steve Fritz of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service opened the gates of the Crystal Creek pen, then quickly walked back to the road. Everyone expected the wolves would notice the open gate and immediately run out, but they stayed in the pen. There was only one gate, and since humans always entered the pen through that gate, the wolves were probably afraid of approaching it. On March 23rd, the biologist cut a hole in the fence well away from the gate and placed a deer carcass just beyond that opening. The next day, a monitoring device indicated wolves were going through the opening to the carcass but returning to the pen after feeding. The pack had not yet figured out that they were free to leave. On March 30th, 5 of the 6 wolves permanently left the pen, and the final one joined them the next day. It was a 10-day process, but by March 31st, all the Crystal Creek wolves were roaming freely in Yellowstone. Park Service employees, park visitors, and local residents regularly saw the Crystal Creek wolves exploring the region around their pen. They were also seen playing together, a sign that wolves were getting comfortable with their new home. Those were the first sightings of the free-roaming wolf pack in Yellowstone in 69 years. The family stayed near the pen for the next 4 weeks, feeding on winter-killed elk and hunting elk on their own. The 3 wolves in the Rose Creek pen had a different story. The big male, Wolf 10, who at 122 pounds was above average size for an adult male, left that pen soon after the gate was opened on March 22nd. That made him the first of the wolves from Canada to leave a pen. The 2 females, like the Crystal Creek wolves, were more hesitant about departing. The mother wolf seemed afraid of the open gate and refused to approach it. We did not know it at the time, but she was pregnant. She and the male had formed a pair bond during their time in the pen. The male stayed just outside the pen. That would have been very dangerous from his point of view, for he knew the area was the most likely place for humans to appear. But he loyally waited for his new mate and her daughter to come out. It would be like someone who had escaped from the prison, staying nearby and waiting for his friend to break out, regardless of guards patrolling the area and the high probability of being recaptured. On March 23rd, the biologists hiked up towards the Rose Creek pens, intending to cut an open in the backside of the fence, like they had done for the other pen. A blizzard drastically cut visibility as they approached the site. Near the pen, they heard a howl, then saw 10 staring at them, just 50 yards away. The crew, not wanting to disturb him, turned around and quickly hiked back down the trail. The male followed them downhill, howling continuously as he escorted them away from his new family. He returned to the pen area once the people were gone. Sometime in the next day or two, the mother wolf left the pen with her daughter, and all 3 Rose Creek wolves began traveling throughout the surrounding area. A hole was cut in the fence in the 3rd pen on March 27th, and the 5 Soda Butte wolves walked through it to a nearby deer carcass later that day. Like the Crystal Creek wolves, they returned to the pen at first, then left the site for a good 2 days later. All 14 of the wolves brought down from Alberta were now exploring their new land that would become their home. The reintroduction team had successfully carried out the plan to bring wolves back to Yellowstone. Now it was up to the wolves to do the rest. Restore the park to its original condition, including the sounds of howling wolves. What do you guys think? Should we stop there? Should we do some nails? That's very good for everybody. Luna, Cookie. Nice job, everyone.